Captain Veltar gripped the edge of his command chair as another asteroid crashed into the hull of his ship. The crystal wind shook violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, and alarms screamed through the corridors. "Hull breach on Deck 3. Shouted his engineer from across the bridge. "We're losing atmosphere fast." Veltar watched the main screen show dozens of spinning rocks heading straight for them. The asteroid field had appeared out of nowhere, catching his exploration ship completely off guard. They had been mapping this quiet sector of space for 3 weeks without any problems. Now they were trapped in the middle of a deadly rock storm. Emergency power to shields. Veltar ordered, but he could see it was too late. The crystal wind was a science vessel, not a warship. Her shields were meant for cosmic radiation, not massive chunks of stone moving at incredible speeds. That another impact sent sparks flying from the control panels. The lights went out for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. When the dim red lighting returned, Veltar could see the damage reports flooding his screens. Main engines were offline. Life support was failing. The navigation system was completely destroyed. "Captain, we need to get out of here," his pilot called out, fighting to control the ship as more asteroids struck their hull. "I'm trying," Veltar replied, but his hands moved uselessly over dead controls. The ship was drifting now, pulled along by the movement of the asteroid field. They were completely helpless. Science Officer Kethmer looked up from his station with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, the asteroids are moving in a pattern. This isn't natural. Something is pushing them." Before Veltar could respond, the largest asteroid yet appeared on their screen. It was the size of a small moon, tumbling directly toward them. The crystal wind had no power to move out of its path. "All crew to emergency stations," Veltar shouted into the ship's communication system. "Prepare for impact." But the giant rock missed them by only a few hundred meters. As it passed, its gravity pulled the crystal wind into a violent spin. Equipment flew through the air. Several crew members were thrown against the walls. When the spinning finally stopped, half the bridge stations were sparking and broken. "Damage report." Veltar called out when he could finally speak again. The reports came in from all over the ship. The engine room was flooded with toxic gas. The medical bay had lost power. 3 crew members were badly injured. Worst of all, their life support system was failing fast. They had maybe 6 hours of breathable air left. "Can we repair the engines?" Veltar asked his engineer. The engineer shook his head sadly. "The main drive is completely destroyed, Captain. Even if we had parts, it would take weeks to fix." Veltar closed his eyes and tried to think. His crew was depending on him, but he was out of options. The crystal wind was dead in space, drifting helplessly through the asteroid field. No other Zephyrian ships were within range to help them. They were completely alone. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "should we send a distress call?" Veltar hesitated. Zephyrian culture taught them to be self-reliant. Asking for help was considered shameful, especially for an exploration captain. But looking around at his damaged bridge and injured crew, he knew they had no choice. "Yes," he said finally. "Send the call on all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." The communications officer nodded and began working at his damaged station. "The main transmitter is broken, but I can use the emergency beacon. It's not very powerful, but it should reach anyone in the nearby systems." "What should the message say?" the officer asked. Veltar thought for a moment. "Tell them we are the Zephyrian vessel Crystal Wind. We are trapped in an asteroid field and need immediate assistance. Our life support is failing, and we have injured crew members. We will be grateful for any help." The communications officer typed the message and sent it out into space. The weak signal would travel to nearby star systems, hoping to find someone willing to help strangers in trouble. How long before someone might answer? Veltar asked. If anyone hears us at all, it could be hours or even days, the officer replied. Most species don't respond to distress calls from unknown ships. Veltar nodded sadly. He knew this was true. In their travels, the Zephyrians had seen many species who only helped their own kind. Some cultures ignored distress calls completely. Others demanded payment before offering assistance. Keep sending the message every 10 minutes, Veltar ordered. And start rationing the remaining air. We need to make it last as long as possible. As his crew worked to keep the ship running, Veltar stared out at the spinning asteroids around them. Somewhere out there, their distress call was traveling through space at the speed of light. But would anyone hear it? And even if they did, would they care enough to help? Unknown to Captain Veltar, his message had already reached the human colony. Ship Freedom, several light years away. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was monitoring the communication channels when the alien distress call came through. She quickly called her captain. Captain Murphy, we're receiving a distress signal from an unknown vessel, she reported. They say they're trapped and need immediate assistance. Captain Jake Murphy didn't hesitate. In human culture, you always helped people in trouble, no matter who they were. Send their message to Fleet Command immediately, he ordered. And set course for their location. We're going to help them. Amy Brooks quickly sent the alien distress call to every human ship in the sector. Within minutes, the message was spreading through the entire human fleet network. What the Zephyrians thought was a simple call for help had just triggered the largest rescue operation in human space. Admiral Lisa Carter was drinking her morning coffee when the emergency alert came through. She set down her cup and read the message on her personal screen. An alien vessel was in trouble, trapped in an asteroid field with failing life support. The distress call had been forwarded by Captain Murphy from the colony ship Freedom. Lisa didn't waste any time. She pressed the fleet emergency button on her desk. Throughout the human sector, alarm bells rang on dozens of ships. Captains and crews dropped whatever they were doing and ran to their battle stations. This is Admiral Carter to all ships in Sector 7, she announced over the fleet communication system. We have a code red rescue situation. Unknown alien vessel with crew in immediate danger. All available ships report for emergency deployment. Within 30 minutes, the first ships were already changing course toward the asteroid field. Captain Roy Bennett on the heavy cruiser Eagle was closest to the location. He pushed his engines to maximum speed, knowing that every minute could mean the difference between life and death for the trapped aliens. How many ships are responding? Admiral Carter asked her communications officer. 12 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 24 fighter squadrons so far, the officer replied. Captain Torres is bringing his destroyer group from patrol duty. The medical frigates are launching from Starbase Phoenix. Engineering ships are coming from the construction yards. Admiral Carter nodded. This was exactly what she expected. When humans heard that someone was in trouble, they responded with everything they had. It didn't matter if the people in danger were human or alien. Help was help. On the bridge of her flagship Liberty, Admiral Carter studied the tactical display. The rescue fleet was growing by the hour as more ships received the emergency call. Supply ships were loading emergency food and medical supplies. Transport ships were preparing to evacuate the alien crew if needed. Admiral, we're getting reports from deep space monitoring stations, her intelligence officer said. They're tracking massive fleet movements toward the rescue coordinates. Good, Admiral Carter replied. Make sure all rescue ships have full medical teams and engineering equipment. We don't know what kind of help these aliens will need. 3 hours after the first distress call, the human rescue fleet was fully assembled. Admiral Carter looked at the final numbers on her screen. The response was impressive, even by human standards. 48 major warships, 6 hospital ships, 4 engineering vessels, 2 mobile repair stations, and enough supply ships to support a small war. Meanwhile, aboard the damaged Crystal Wind, Science Officer Kefmer was staring at his sensor. Readings in complete shock. At first, he thought his equipment was broken. The numbers made no sense. "Captain Veltar, you need to see this." Kefmer called across the bridge. Captain Veltar walked over to the science station, moving carefully. In the low gravity caused by their failing power systems. "What is it?" "Sir, I'm detecting multiple ships approaching our location," Kefmer said, his voice shaking. "But the readings are impossible. It shows dozens of large vessels, all moving in perfect formation." Veltar looked at the display screen. Even with their damaged sensors, the approaching fleet was clearly visible. Ship after ship appeared on their screens, each one larger than anything in the Zephyrian Space Navy. "How many ships?" Veltar asked quietly. Kefmer checked his readings again. "At least 50, sir. Maybe more. And they're all armed. These aren't rescue ships, Captain. This is a military invasion fleet." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member stared at the sensor display, watching the massive human fleet approach their position. In Zephyrian culture, military fleets meant conquest and war. No one sent warships to rescue strangers. "They must think we're valuable," Veltar said slowly. "Maybe they want to capture our ship for its technology. Or they want to capture us," Kefmer added fearfully. "Some species take prisoners for slave labor." Veltar tried to stay calm, but his mind was racing with terrible possibilities. The Zephyrians were peaceful explorers. They had no weapons, no valuable cargo, and no military secrets. But clearly, these approaching aliens thought they were worth sending an entire fleet to capture. "Can we contact them?" Veltar asked his communications officer. "I can try, sir. But our transmitter is very weak. They might not hear us." "Do it. Anyway, maybe we can convince them we're not worth the trouble." The communications officer began sending messages toward the approaching fleet. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian exploration ship Crystal Wind. We are peaceful scientists with no military value. Please do not attack us." For several minutes, there was no response. Then a strong, clear voice came through their damaged speakers. It was speaking perfect Zephyrian, translated by advanced computer systems. "Crystal Wind, this is Admiral Lisa Carter of the Human Space Fleet. We received your distress call and are here to provide assistance. Please prepare to receive rescue." Teams. The Zephyrian bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. Rescue teams from a military fleet? "Admiral Carter, we appreciate your offer," Veltar replied carefully, "but we cannot pay for military assistance. We are only scientists." There was a pause before the human admiral replied. "Pay? Captain Veltar, we're not here for payment. We're here because you need help. Our medical teams are preparing to board your ship to treat your injured crew members." Kefmer whispered to his captain, "This makes no sense. Why would they send a military fleet for a rescue mission?" Veltar was wondering the same thing. In every galactic culture he knew, military fleets were used for war, conquest, or protecting valuable trade routes. They were never used for rescuing stranger ships, especially alien ships with no political or economic value. "Admiral Carter," Veltar said into his communicator, "we are grateful for your help, but why did you send so many warships? We are only 12 crew members on a small science vessel." Another pause. Then Admiral Carter's voice came back, sounding slightly confused herself. "Captain Veltar, this is standard emergency response protocol. When someone is in danger, we send whatever resources are needed to help them. The size of your crew doesn't matter. Standard protocol?" Kefmer checked his cultural database, but found no reference to any species that considered military fleet deployment standard for rescue operations. The humans were either lying about their intentions, or they came from a culture unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. As the massive human fleet surrounded the Crystal Wind, Captain Veltar prepared his crew for whatever was coming. Next, were they about to be rescued by the strangest aliens in the galaxy, or captured by the most clever? Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship Liberty, looking at the damaged alien ship on the main screen. The crystal wind was much smaller than she had expected, barely the size of a human patrol boat. She could see holes in its hull and scorch marks from asteroid impacts. "Commander Williams, open a channel to the alien vessel," she ordered her diplomatic officer. Commander Pete Williams nodded and activated the communication system. "Channel open, Admiral." "Captain Veltar, this is Admiral Carter. We need to assess your tactical situation before we begin rescue operations. Can you provide details about your ship's condition and crew status?" On the crystal wind, Captain Veltar heard the word tactical and felt his heart sink. Military leaders always asked about tactical situations before attacking. He looked around his damaged bridge at his frightened crew members. "Admiral Carter," Veltar replied with a shaking voice, "we surrender. Please do not harm my crew. We will give you everything we have." Admiral Carter frowned at her communication panel. "Surrender? Captain, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're here to help you, not attack you. We just need to know how badly your ship is damaged so we can send the right repair teams." But Captain Veltar was not convinced. When Admiral Carter mentioned securing the area with destroyer patrols, he was certain she was planning to take control of their location. When she talked about establishing a perimeter, he thought she meant surrounding them to prevent escape. "Please, Admiral Carter," Veltar begged, "take our ship if you want it, but let my crew live. We have families back home. They are just scientists." Commander Williams looked at Admiral Carter with confusion. "Ma'am, I think they're afraid of us. They seem to think we're here to attack them." Admiral Carter shook her head. "This is ridiculous. Pete, explain to them that we're a rescue fleet, not an invasion force." Commander Williams tried his best. "Captain Veltar, please understand. We are here to rescue you and your crew. We received your distress call asking for help. That's why we came." "But why so many ships?" Veltar asked. "We are only 12 people. Why would you need an entire fleet to capture 12 scientists?" "We're not trying to capture anyone," Commander Williams said, getting frustrated. "This is a rescue operation." The conversation was interrupted when Lieutenant Colonel Nancy Price, the fleet's Marine commander, contacted the flagship. "Admiral Carter, my teams are ready to board the alien vessel and secure their injured crew members." Captain Veltar heard the word secure and panicked completely. In military language, securing people usually meant taking them prisoner. "We surrender." Veltar shouted into his communicator, "Please don't hurt us. We'll do whatever you want." "Admiral." Carter rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache coming on. This first contact situation was going very badly. The aliens seemed terrified of them, but she couldn't understand why. "Colonel Price, delay the boarding operation," she ordered. "We have a communication problem here." Meanwhile, Dr. Kevin Ross, the fleet's chief medical officer, was listening to the conversation from his hospital ship. He decided to try a different approach. "Captain Veltar, this is Dr. Kevin Ross from the human medical ship Mercy. I'm a doctor, not a soldier. Are any of your crew members injured? I'd like to help them." The gentle tone in Dr. Ross's voice was completely different from the military officers. Captain Veltar hesitated before answering. "Yes, doctor. 3 of my crew have broken bones from the asteroid impacts. One has a serious head injury. But our medical bay lost power and we cannot treat them properly." "I understand," Dr. Ross replied kindly. "With your permission, I'd like to send over a medical team with portable equipment. We can treat your injured crew members right there on your ship. You don't have to leave your vessel." "For the first time since the human fleet arrived, Captain." Veltar felt a small spark of hope. Maybe these humans really were trying to help, You would do that, without payment? Veltar asked. Dr. Ross sounded confused by the question. Of course without payment. You have injured people who need medical care. That's what doctors do. Captain Veltar discussed the situation quietly with his science officer. In Zephyrian culture, medical help always required payment or trade agreements. Free medical care for strangers was unheard of. Dr. Ross, we accept your help, Veltar said finally. But please, only send medical personnel. No soldiers. Understood, Captain. I'm sending 2 doctors and 4 medical technicians. They're completely unarmed. And they're only here to help your injured crew. A small human shuttle left the hospital ship and approached the Crystal Wind. Captain Veltar watched nervously as it docked with his ship. When the airlock opened, 6 humans in white medical uniforms came aboard. They carried medical equipment and supplies, but no weapons. Dr. Ross was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He introduced himself to Captain Veltar and asked to see the injured crew members. As he worked to treat their wounds, he talked quietly with the alien captain. Captain Veltar, can you help me understand something? Dr. Ross asked while bandaging a Zephyrian's broken arm. Why did you think we were here to attack you? Veltar watched the doctor work with careful, skilled hands. Because you sent so many warships. In our experience, military fleets mean conquest or war. We've never seen anyone send an entire fleet just to rescue strangers. Dr. Ross paused in his work. But you sent a distress call asking for help. We always respond to distress calls. Always? Veltar asked. Even from unknown aliens? Of course. Dr. Ross replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. People in danger need help. It doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. Captain Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Doctor, how many of your ships came here just to help us? Dr. Ross thought about it. Well, there are the medical ships like mine, the engineering vessels to repair your ship, the supply ships with food and equipment, the destroyers to protect the rescue operation from any threats, and the cruisers to coordinate everything. I'd say about 50 ships total. 50 ships, Veltar repeated slowly, for 12 people you've never met. That's right, Dr. Ross said with a smile. Though I have to say, this is one of our smaller rescue operations. Last month, we sent over 100 ships to help evacuate a human colony that was hit by solar flares. Captain Veltar stared at the human doctor in amazement. These people sent entire fleets to help anyone in trouble, whether they were human or alien, friend or stranger. It was completely beyond his understanding. As Dr. Ross finished treating the last injured crew member, Captain Veltar realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe might be wrong. Chief Engineer Danny Clark floated through the damaged corridors of the Crystal Wind, carrying his repair tools and scanning equipment. He had been working inside the alien ship for 6 hours, fixing their broken systems alongside Engineer Temris, a friendly Zephyrian who spoke decent English. Your ship design is very interesting, Danny said as he welded a new power coupling into place. These energy conduits are much more efficient than ours. Temris watched the human work with fascination. You fix things very quickly, Danny, but I do not understand why you are here. Captain Veltar says your fleet has 50 ships. Why send so many for one small rescue? Danny paused his welding and looked at the alien engineer. What do you mean? This is normal for us. When someone needs help, we send whatever it takes to help them. But we are strangers, Temris said. We are not part of your species or your government. Why waste so many resources on us? It's not a waste, Danny replied, getting back to work. You needed help, so we came to help. That's what people do. Temris was quiet for a moment. In our culture, we only help family and close friends. Most species in the galaxy are the same. They help their own kind first, and others only if there is profit or political advantage. Danny stopped working again and turned to face the alien. That's terrible. What if a stranger was drowning in a river? Would you just walk away? We would try to help, Temris said slowly, but we would not risk our own lives or spend large amounts of money for someone we don't know. But that's exactly what we're doing, Danny said. We're spending millions of credits on fuel, equipment, and crew time to save you and your friends, and we're happy to do it. On the bridge of the Crystal Wind, Science Officer Kethmer was having a similar conversation with Communications Specialist Kelly White. She was helping him repair his sensor array while they talked. Kelly, can you explain something to me? Kethmer asked. Your Admiral Carter has the authority to build a space station if needed for this rescue. Is that normal? Kelly nodded as she connected new wires to the sensor panel. Sure. If we need a base of operations for a long rescue mission, we can set up temporary facilities. We've done it before. But the cost must be enormous, Kethmer said. Building a space station costs more than most planets make in a year. Money isn't important when lives are at stake, Kelly replied. Our government has emergency funds set aside specifically for rescue operations. We use whatever we need. Kethmer stared at her. Your government keeps money ready just to help strangers? Of course. We also have emergency food supplies, medical equipment, and rescue ships stationed throughout human space. You never know when someone might need help. What if the people you're helping are criminals or enemies? Kethmer asked. Kelly thought about it. We'd still help them. If they're criminals, we can arrest them after we save their lives. But we save them first. Everyone deserves to live. Meanwhile, Captain Veltar was in his quarters, talking with Dr. Ross, who was conducting follow-up medical examinations on the rescued crew members. Doctor, I have been thinking about what you told me, Veltar said. You said last month you sent 100 ships to evacuate a human colony. Were they important people? Government officials or military leaders? Doctor. Ross smiled. No, just regular colonists. Farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, children. About 10,000 people total. A solar storm was going to hit their planet, so we evacuated everyone to safety. 10,000 people, Veltar repeated. And you sent 100 ships for them. Actually, we sent more than that, Dr. Ross said. We also sent cargo ships to move their belongings, hospital ships in case anyone got sick during the evacuation, and construction ships to help them build new homes on a different planet. Captain Veltar sat down heavily in his chair. In our culture, such an operation would only be done for the most important leaders of our government. Maybe for a few hundred key scientists or military officers, but never for ordinary citizens. Everyone is important, Dr. Ross said simply. A farmer's life is just as valuable as a president's life. A child's life is just as important as a general's life. We don't measure the worth of people by their jobs or their money. But surely you must expect something in return, Veltar insisted. Political alliance, trade agreements, valuable information? Dr. Ross shook his head. We help because it's the right thing to do. We don't expect anything back. Though I have to admit, we've made some good friends this way. People tend to remember when you help them in their darkest hour. Later that day, the human repair teams had finished their work. Engineer Temris called Captain Veltar to see the results. The crystal wind looked better than it had in years. Not only had the humans fixed all the damage from the asteroid field, they had also upgraded many of the ship's systems. Captain, Temris said excitedly, look at this. They installed new shield generators that are twice as powerful as our old ones. The navigation system now has star charts for the entire sector. They even fixed the food processors that have been broken. For months, Captain Veltar walked through his ship in amazement. The humans had done far more than just rescue them. They had completely restored the crystal wind and made it better than before. Admiral Carter, Veltar said over the communication system, We cannot possibly pay for all these improvements. Our government does not have enough money." Admiral Carter's voice came back immediately. "Captain Veltar, you don't owe us anything. We're just glad we could help. Consider it a gift from humanity." "A gift?" Veltar asked weakly. "That's right. We want you to have a safe journey home. These upgrades will help protect you from future dangers." Science Officer Kethmer was furiously taking notes about everything he had learned. When he returned to Zephyrian space, he would have to write a report about the humans for the High Council. But how could he possibly explain what he had seen? How could he tell them about a species that sent entire fleets to rescue strangers? How could he describe people who gave away expensive technology as gifts? How could he make them understand creatures who helped others without expecting anything in return? The more Kethmer learned about humans, the more he realized that these beings were unlike anything else in the galaxy. They were either the most generous species that had ever existed, or the most dangerous. And he wasn't sure which possibility scared him more. As the rescue operation neared its end, one thing was becoming clear to all the Zephyrians. The humans had just changed everything they thought they knew about how intelligent species behaved in the universe. Captain Jake Murphy arrived just as the rescue operation was finishing. His colony ship Freedom had been the first to receive the alien distress call, and he wanted to see the results personally. As his shuttle approached the crystal wind, he was amazed at the transformation. The alien ship looked completely new. Fresh hull plating covered the asteroid damage. New shield generators glowed softly along the sides. The communication arrays had been rebuilt and upgraded. Even the ship's exterior lights were brighter than before. "Impressive work, Captain," Murphy said to Chief Engineer Danny Clark as they floated together outside the alien vessel. "Thanks, Captain. The crew did a great job. We not only fixed everything that was broken, we also added some improvements that should help them avoid problems in the future." Inside the crystal wind, Captain Veltar was saying goodbye to Dr. Ross. The human doctor had not only healed his injured crew members, he had also given each Zephyrian a complete medical examination and treated several health problems they didn't even know they had. "Dr. Ross, I still do not understand why you did all this for us," Veltar said. "In 3 days you have saved our lives, repaired our ship, upgraded our systems, and healed our bodies. And you ask for nothing in return." Dr. Ross packed his medical equipment into his bag. "Captain, let me ask you something. If you found a lost child crying on the street, would you help them find their parents?" "Of course," Veltar replied immediately. "Would you ask the child to pay you first?" Dr. Ross continued. "No, that would be wrong. Children cannot pay for help." "Then you understand perfectly," Dr. Ross said with a smile. "We help because people need help. It's that simple." As the human medical team prepared to leave, Engineer Temris approached Captain Veltar with a worried expression. "Captain, I have been thinking about our report to the High Council. How do we explain what happened here?" Veltar looked around. His completely restored bridge. Every system was working perfectly. The star charts showed routes to dozens of human emergency stations where they could get help if needed again. The communication system had been programmed with human emergency frequencies. "I don't know, Temris. How do we tell them we met a species that treats strangers like family?" Science Officer Kethmer joined the conversation, carrying a portable computer filled with notes and observations. "Captain, I have been recording everything. The humans gave us detailed records of their rescue procedures, their emergency response protocols, and their first contact guidelines. They want other species to know how to ask for help if needed. They're sharing their military procedures." "With us?" Veltar asked in shock. "Not military procedures," Kethmer corrected. "Rescue procedures." Admiral Carter explained that they have 2 completely different sets of protocols. Military operations are kept secret, but rescue operations are shared with everyone. They want as many people as possible to know how to call for help. On the flagship Liberty, Admiral Carter was conducting her final conversation with the alien. Captain Veltar, your ship is ready for departure. All systems are functioning at full capacity. Do you have any questions before you leave? Admiral Carter, my government will want to establish formal contact with your people. Would this be possible? Absolutely, Admiral Carter replied. I'm sending you the contact information for our diplomatic corps. They handle all official meetings between governments. I'm also giving you the locations of our nearest embassies and trade stations. You have embassies already established? Veltar asked. Throughout this sector, yes. We've been here for 2 years, but we try to keep a low profile until we're invited. To make contact, we don't want to disturb other species who prefer to be left alone. Captain Veltar was amazed once again. The humans had been quietly living in Zephyrian space for 2 years, but had never tried to make contact or claim territory. They had simply been there, ready to help anyone who needed assistance. One final question, Admiral. What do you want? US to tell our government about humanity? Admiral Carter thought for a moment. Tell them we're your neighbors. Tell them we're here if you need help. And tell them we're always interested in making new friends. The Crystal Wind undocked from the human repair station and began its journey home. Captain Veltar stood on his bridge, watching the massive human fleet through his view screen. 50 ships had come to save 12 strangers. Hundreds of crew members had worked for 3 days without rest. Millions of credits worth of equipment and supplies had been given away as gifts. As the Zephyrian ship moved away, the human vessels began to disperse. Each ship returned to its regular duties as if saving an alien crew was just another normal day. Admiral Carter filed a routine report about the successful rescue of 12 explorers and recommended improved translation protocols for future first contact situations. But unknown to the humans, their simple act of kindness was about to send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. 3 weeks later, Science Officer Kethmer stood before the Zephyrian High Council, delivering his report about the encounter with humanity. The council members listened in stunned silence as he described the human response to their distress call. You are telling us they sent 50 warships to rescue 12 scientists? Council leader Mordak asked. Yes, sir. And they refused all payment. They even upgraded our ship and gave us star charts and emergency communication frequencies. This makes no sense, another council member said. Why would any species waste so many resources on strangers? According to their Admiral Carter, this was standard procedure, Kethmer replied. They have similar protocols for natural disasters, medical emergencies, and even missing persons cases. They regularly deploy entire fleets to help people in trouble. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members thought the humans were planning some kind of elaborate trick. Others believed they were gathering intelligence for a future invasion. A few wondered if the humans were simply insane. What is your assessment, Science Officer? Council leader Mordak asked. Kethmer looked at his notes one final time. Sir, I believe we have encountered something completely new in galactic politics. The humans appear to be genuinely altruistic on a massive scale. They help others because they believe it is right, not because they expect anything in return. And what does this mean for us? It means, sir, that we have neighbors who are either the most trustworthy allies possible, or the most dangerous enemies imaginable. Anyone capable of mobilizing such resources for peaceful purposes could certainly do the same for military purposes. Within days, copies of Kethmer's report were being shared with governments throughout the galaxy. Alien leaders studied the human response with fascination and fear. Some species began preparing diplomatic missions to make contact with these strange altruistic humans. Others started building bigger weapons, terrified of creatures who could deploy such overwhelming force so quickly. But aboard his colony ship, Freedom, Captain Jake Murphy continued his regular patrol routes, completely unaware that humanity's simple act of helping strangers had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever.